the Pennsylvania Republican Senate primary, we know that it's kind of come down. There are, there's 3 or 4 people that are in the race still, but it's really kind of come down to Kathy Barnett versus Dr. Oz. And Kathy Barnett sort of exploded onto the scene last week when she took Dr. Oz to task for his support of abortion in the past. And she had a very powerful, some very powerful words from her own experience and why she's pro-life. And now the so-called conservatives who have become Dr. Oz shills for some reason have set out, especially over the last couple of days, it has been an onslaught to try to destroy this woman, Kathy Barnett. And they're taking out of context, clipped things, and they're making montages and putting it online. They're digging through her tweets. This is what conservatives are doing. Digging through tweets from like 9 years ago to try to find offensive things to take this person down. But what they're actually finding is that they're really working against themselves, because as they dig through her tweets, what they find is that, back in 2014, she was pro-life. She was socially conservative. As opposed to Dr. Oz, who back 10 years ago, as we played on the show a few weeks ago, 10 years ago, he was pushing puberty blockers for trans kids, so-called quote-unquote trans kids. Now, what you have to understand about Dr. Oz when it comes to the gender ideology issue in particular is he was on the forefront of pushing gender ideology onto kids. I mean, this was he did a segment, his first segment on it was 2010, 2011. So he didn't jump on the bandwagon. He was driving the bandwagon to push puberty blockers and gender confusion and gender transition onto kids. Now, that's all we need to know about him, actually. That's enough that should disqualify him forever. And more than that, anybody on the right who's shilling for him is also, as far as I'm concerned, disqualified forever from having any kind of credibility. Someone who was pushing gender transition onto kids, no, period. Like, I don't care what else you've done in your life. I don't care if outside of that you've been a war hero. I don't care what else you've done. You do that, you're disqualified. As happened with Dr. Oz, though, this is just one in a parade of leftist radicalism that we've seen from him. He's pro-abortion. Yet while Kathy Barnett, even 6, 7, 8 years ago, was speaking out to protect the unborn, 6, 7, 8 years ago, Dr. Oz was pro-abortion. 2 years ago, he was pro-abortion. Pro-gun control. He was talking about systemic racism. And then this is less than 2 years ago, about a year and a half ago, this was a segment on Dr. Oz's show about the Jacob Blake case. Let's watch this here.
Shot 7 times in the back. Family of Jacob Blake speaks out.
He was trying to kill my son.
His devastating injuries.
Hurts to breathe, hurts to sleep.
Do they think he'll be able to walk again?
Then, behind the horrifying death of Daniel Prude.
Let me up!
A mental health crisis gone terribly wrong.
I called for help, and that was the help they gave him. They don't even treat animals like that.
Next, Oz.
This was not 20 years ago. This was in 2020. And he was pushing the Jacob Blake false narrative. And I don't want to hear any excuses about, well, we didn't know at the time. If you're an honest and rational person, you knew immediately that the narrative over Jacob Blake was false. I knew immediately. First time I saw the video. Before we even knew all the other details. I mean, I didn't know initially that Jacob Blake, for example, allegedly broke into this woman's house and raped her and then stole her credit cards and her car and all that. And then he showed back up at her house and she called the cops, and that's what precipitated all this. Like, I didn't know that backstory. I wasn't surprised by it when I did learn it. But just watching the video, it was clear enough that he was fighting with the cops. He was at least trying to steal a car. He was reaching into a car. He had a knife. I mean, you could see all that in the video. And this is why the police officer in that case was not charged with any crime, because he didn't do anything wrong. Jacob Blake was 1,000% in the wrong. So this was Dr. Oz back in 2020, less than 2 years ago, pushing, the radical BLM agenda and a false anti-police narrative, coming to the defense of Jacob Blake, who is an utter, total, woman-abusing predator scumbag. And now there are conservatives who want him to be in the Senate as a Republican? Like this guy, he has zero record of anything remotely conservative. His entire record, his entire public career has been spent pushing leftism in its most radical forms. And he doesn't even live in Pennsylvania. He's a Turkish citizen. So a Turkish citizen and New Jersey resident leftist is running for the Senate as a Republican in Pennsylvania. And he's being pushed and promoted by very prominent people on the right, to include President Trump. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and share it with all your friends.